Hey there everybody, it's markcrilley. I'm back with another How to Draw video. Before we get started, I want to announce the winners of the contest that we had here on the channel a couple of weeks ago. More than 2,000 different people entered. Sadly, only 5 could win, and I did not select these. I just want to make that clear. My publisher went through and selected at random the following 5 people. I'm going to begin with the runners-up. The second place prizes go to Will Griesbach, congratulations. Ashley Little, also a winner of the second place prize, Des the Dino, hope I'm getting that right, and finally Sabina Adelpohler. All 4 of you are winning second place prizes in the contest. And now for the grand prize winner, who gets 4 different books, a huge box of Prismacolor pencils, and an original work of art. That winner is Major Wolf. Congratulations to all of you. Thanks so much for taking part in the contest. You will be getting contacted by my publisher, who will take care of getting you your prizes. But for now, let's go ahead and get on with the video. All right, so today we're going to be learning how to draw lips, and people like to know the size that I'm working at, so I've put a box here that is 4 inches on all sides. That works out to just a little bit over 10 centimeters. And then I put a line right across the middle to divide it up. And let's go ahead and get into putting down some basic guidelines. Now, what I'm going to start doing is to put the shape of the upper lip. And I'm actually going to come over here to this area outside of the box. I'm thinking outside the box, people. I'm sorry, terrible dad joke. We're getting started with the dad jokes already? Crilly, come on, man. And I'm going to come over here and also come just outside of that box here while touching this line, this central line here. And that's going to give us the corners, the far corners of the lips. And now I'm going to begin drawing a sort of basic contour line for the upper lip. And the way I'm going to draw these lips is so that they are kind of turning very slightly into a 3/4 point of view, just to make it interesting. Instead of just looking dead on. And you'll notice that I'm giving this a very gentle curve, both sides here, as it comes up towards the top of that little area where it dips in relation to the shape of the upper lip. But as you can see, I'm putting this whole dipping area over here to the left of that central line because of the 3/4 point of view. And let's go ahead and draw a second line down here that will complete this upper lip. Now I want these to be kind of rich, full lips, and so I'm creating a certain space between these 2 lines. If you wanted someone that was a little more thin-lipped, then you would probably drop this upper line down lower. But not me. I want this to be thick, luscious lips, and so I'm going in here and continuing this other line. You can see that I'm having it dip a little bit here in the middle, but maybe not as pronounced as it is up there. And then I notice that I'm not having this line connect with that one. I'm actually leaving a little gap between the 2. And I guess I'll do right now is just I'll move along and draw the lower lip line, which is fairly close to that center line of the box. If indeed you decided to draw the box like I did, you can use that line to help you in placing that. And I'm just putting slight irregularities into this line without making it, I don't want it to be too smooth, I guess. And now we come down to the lower lip line. The truth is, drawing the basic lines of the lips, there aren't that many lines. So much of the drawing is done by way of shading. So you can count on that being a big part of the video, and of course I will have to do some time lapse because shading just is very time consuming. But you can see here that I have made the lower lip, as you would guess, a little thicker than the upper lip. That's standard, although sometimes you see people whose upper and lower lips are very nearly the same thickness. And in this case, certainly you can see the difference between the 2 in terms of the distance between the lines. And I've decided this time to have the teeth be visible. Because we're in a 3/4 point of view, I think the center of the teeth is actually set back a little bit from the lips. Let's see if I can pull this off. And I'm going to go ahead and draw sort of a boxy shape of one of the two front teeth. So that's your central line of the teeth right there, the central line of the square. And they actually touch pretty neatly upon that first line. How convenient. For those of you who have drawn the box, it makes it a lot easier for placing these lines. It may look a little weird at first, especially the teeth I think look strange until you've added shading. They tend to sort of stand out too much, but we're getting the basic guidelines in place. And then when I get into the shading part of it, I think that's going to help considerably in de-weirdifying these lips. But this is pretty much it, I would say, in terms of line work. And if you've been able to follow along with that, you've basically drawn all the lines that you need, it seems to me, for drawing a quality pair of lips. But now comes the hard part of shading, and I'm going to go ahead and sort of get right into it. But before I do that, let's go ahead and darken in, because these corners of the lips need to be quite dark. I've noticed when I study like photos that there's quite a lot of darkness right down there at the right and left edge of the mouth. These sort of creases, I guess they are. And then I'll go ahead and darken in the rest of the area of the mouth. But we're going to be, beefing this up with my two-pencil method. I'm going to be bringing out a black Prismacolor later on. This is just sort of an ordinary writing pencil that I'm using here, a Dixon Ticonderoga, which I've been using for many years. Not this particular pencil, not this one. You've only used one pencil for years? How do you do it? It's the brand that I have used for years. And you'll notice that I am adding a little more darkness towards the sides. Not quite as much here in the middle, where I guess we would expect to see the tongue a little bit. Just little hints of it. Anyway, this is sort of temporary shading. We're going to be finalizing this more later on. But let's go ahead and get into my approach for shading the upper lip. And I'm going to imagine that light is coming from the left side of the image. And that means that we're going to get just very light shading across here. Now, my feeling about when I'm adding shading to a drawing like this is that this is a first base layer that I don't have to be too concerned about perfection. I am erasing these lines now. It's sort of like now or never in terms of getting rid of a line that you would want to erase later on. So, be gone, temporary guideline. And now I can continue with the shading right across the upper lip. And you can see that I'm not getting too uptight about the beauty of the shading at this stage. Just get a base layer down, something that you can build on top of. And one thing that you may notice is that over here on the left-hand side, that is quite brightly lit, I am going to put very little in terms of shading, because it's quite illuminated by the sun or by the lamp or whatever that's providing light. And so just keeping this quite pale. But as we get over here, especially coming to the other side of the center of the lip, then I'm going to begin darkening things in quite a bit. I feel like this line might be a little off. My friends, forgive me if I make an adjustment on the fly. I'm going to bring this down just a little bit. Bringing it down. And then, try to get it just a little narrower as it reaches the corners of the lips. But again, really kind of speeding through this at this stage with the plan of doing much more careful shading later on. But that gives you the basics. of what I intend to do there. And yeah, this whole area is going to get much more intensely shaded by the end of the drawing. But let's come over here now, and I think what can happen sometimes is that there's a little bit of shadow cast by the upper lip upon the lower lip in this area right here. So this area can get a little darker. And then with the lower lip, I think you're more likely to see little sort of glints of shimmering light, especially sort of if there is some lipstick on the lips. Hang on, I feel like I need to darken the area of the mouth so as to make it more plainly visible against the shading of the lower lip. But what I'm going to do here is sort of divide my shading between an upper section and a lower section, and then create highlights. I'm going to try to sort of jump in here and do this real fast so you can see what I'm heading toward. Leaving this area white will create a sort of shimmering effect. And I think I need to do what I did over there, sort of tuck this in just a little bit over here. And so you can see as I leave that one area white, it will begin to look a little like sunlight is sort of reflecting off of this lower lip. Now we're also going to have this effect of light coming from the left, illuminating the lip more on the left hand side and way less over here on the right hand side. And so that's where I'm going to start. As I come over here, I'm going to really start darkening things in as I feel that less and less light is reaching the lip, the lower lip over here. And we're getting closer to being done with this lower lip. I am sort of speeding through. Like I said, this is just the base layer. I don't consider this finished proper shading at all. But over here where I had darkened things in, I think that extends. And you see a fair amount of shading all through here, going up and coming down as it sort of blends into the rest of the lip. But I do think it's interesting when you study photos of lips that very often this little area here does not connect. There is no straight line that connects between those two. And it can be sort of interesting that they are visually broken up, those two areas. And maybe that gets us to the basics of the base layer of shading. What I'm going to do now is kick it into time lapse, as I love to do, and sort of polish things up a bit, maybe add just a little bit of texture to these lips, and then I'll come back and give you some pointers about what it is that I have done during this brief period of time lapse. Alright, so at this stage I think we've got what I would call the sort of middle shading done. You know, we're past the base layer, but I wouldn't consider this the final layer of shading. But I wanted to come back and give you just a few pointers about how, as I shade, as I go further on, I began to have the lines following the form of the lower lip, curving in this direction, and then kind of going straight up and down right around here, let's say, and then beginning to curve in the opposite direction. The direction of your pencil strokes can help a lot in terms of conveying the form, and I think as time goes on, I'll be doing more of that kind of thing up here on the upper lip as well, you know, having the lines sort of flowing out in this kind of a direction here to suggest the surface of the upper lip, and then when we come over here, having those lines go more in this kind of a direction. But I thought it was time now to go ahead and bring out my trusty black Prismacolor, which is going to help me start to really take these dark areas, like here in the corner, of the lip, and especially back here deep into the mouth, and really start to push that, the contrast, and get this to really fall farther and farther back into the mouth. I think it becomes especially crucial when you get into shading the lips to have some tool like this for getting the darks to go super dark. Otherwise you can't see the difference between the interior of the mouth and the sort of darker areas of the upper lip. So you see me going in here, and again, I'm not going to connect these two areas. I'm going to keep a little bit of a gap between them. But this is certainly going to help us to make this whole rear area of the interior of the mouth recede into space and look farther, and it appears farther away from us deep inside the mouth, because we're going in with in my case this black colored pencil. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to go ahead and push this area to deep black and maybe have it trail off just a little. But I wanted to do at least a little bit of this real time, and as far as using the black Prismacolor on the lips themselves, just a little bit. I think I can do most of the lip shading with the number 2 pencil, the sort of ordinary writing pencil. In my case, a Dixon Ticonderoga. But yeah, that maybe tells you everything you need to know about that. I'm going to go ahead and do a bit more of the sort of final polish of shading, all in time-lapse, but then I'll come back to give you a few final pieces of advice so that you can get similar results in your drawings. Alright, well, I think that brings us to the end of the video. You really do have to maintain patience during the shading phase of the process. Give yourself at least an hour or more to add shading to the drawing. Patience will make a huge difference. And also, your eraser can be used as a drawing tool. I added a little bit of texture here in the area of the upper lip by way of my eraser, and I think it was a nice little final touch that made quite a big difference in terms of the finished illustration. But let's go ahead and say thank you to anyone who has supported me by getting any of my books, like the Realism Challenge, my book on hyper-realistic illustrations, the Drawing Lesson, a graphic novel that teaches you how to draw, and my very latest book, The 2-Pencil Method. I really cannot say thank you enough to those of you who support me by getting those books. But let's go ahead and lay down this pencil. I want to say thank you to all of you who watched this video. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I'll be back with another one real soon.